She started a crisis that nearly tore the leadership of Israel apart. She was the wife of the most powerful prophet in biblical history. She bore him 2 sons. She saved his life on a dark road when God himself moved to kill him. She walked beside Moses through the early years of his mission, when he was nobody, when he was a fugitive, when he was a shepherd in a foreign land with nothing but a staff and a stuttering voice and the memory of a burning bush. And then the Bible goes almost completely silent about her. No death notice, no farewell, no explanation, just absence. Her name was Zipporah, and embedded in the final references to her in the book of Numbers is a single phrase that biblical scholars, ancient rabbis, Ethiopian church fathers, and modern historians have argued about for 3,000 years. Numbers 12:1, and Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses because of the Ethiopian woman whom he had married. For he had married an Ethiopian woman. The Ethiopian woman. 2 words in Hebrew, ishah, Kushit, that open one of the deepest, most theologically charged, most historically contested questions in the entire Pentateuch. Who was she? Was she Zipporah? And if so, why does the text suddenly call her Ethiopian? Was she a second wife? And if so, what happened to Zipporah? What did Miriam and Aaron actually object to? And why does the Bible, a text that tracks genealogies and travel routes and tent dimensions with obsessive precision, give us almost nothing about what happened to the woman Moses loved? Stay with us, because this story reaches further than you expect. It is approximately 1526 BCE. Egypt is the greatest empire on earth. Its population numbers somewhere between 3 and 5 million people. Its pharaohs have been building in stone for 1,000 years. The pyramids at Giza are already ancient, older to the Egypt of Moses than the Roman Empire is to us today. And in the royal household of Pharaoh, a Hebrew infant is growing up with a new name, Moses. He does not know, in the early years, what he is. He speaks Egyptian. He eats Egyptian food. He wears Egyptian linen and studies in Egyptian schools and walks the corridors of a palace built by the labor of the people he does not yet know are his own. The book of Acts 7:22, Stephen's speech before the Sanhedrin, tells us something that Genesis does not elaborate. Moses was educated in all the wisdom of the Egyptians and was mighty in words and deeds. All the wisdom of the Egyptians. In the 15th century BCE, that phrase encompasses extraordinary breadth. Egyptian wisdom included mathematics. A mathematical papyrus from roughly this period, the Rind mathematical papyrus, demonstrates knowledge of geometry, fractions, and algebraic thinking. It included medicine. The Edwin Smith papyrus, dating to around 1600 BCE, describes 48 surgical cases with a clinical precision that would not be matched in Europe for another 3,000 years. It included architecture, astronomy, jurisprudence, theology, and military strategy. Moses absorbed all of it. The man who would lead 600,000 Israelite men, plus women and children, making the total figure potentially 2 million people, through 40 years of wilderness navigation, was not an untrained shepherd making it up as he went. He was the product of the most sophisticated educational system in the ancient world. But something happened when he was approximately 40 years old. The book of Acts specifies the age, that ended his Egyptian life permanently. He killed a man. B-roll. A deserted stretch of Nile bank, heat, silence, the sound of water, a lone figure walking away into the distance. The man was an Egyptian overseer, beating a Hebrew slave. Moses looked around, saw no one watching, and struck him dead. He buried the body in the sand. The next day, he discovered that someone had seen. Exodus 2:15. When Pharaoh heard of it, he sought to kill Moses. But Moses fled from Pharaoh and stayed in the land of Midian. 40 years of palace privilege, erased in one morning. Moses walked out of Egypt with nothing. He walked into the desert, the Sinai Peninsula, the edges of the Arabian wilderness, toward a land and a people he had never encountered. And there, at a well in Midian, everything changed again. Exodus 2:16 through 21. You are sitting at a well in the land of Midian. The desert stretches in every direction. It is brutally hot. You have been walking for days. 7 young women arrive to water their father's flock. Their names are not given, not yet, except for the eldest. She is Zipporah, daughter of Reuel, priest of Midian. Shepherds from nearby arrive and drive the women away, a common enough occurrence in the ancient world, where water rights at desert wells were contested violently and women had no legal recourse against larger men. Moses stands up. He drives the shepherds away. He waters the women's flock himself. It is one of the quietest heroic acts in the entire Bible. No angels, no burning bushes, no divine instruction. Just a man who has lost everything, sitting at a well in a foreign desert, who sees injustice and acts. The women return to their father early. He asks why. They tell him, an Egyptian man, they call him Egyptian, the only language his appearance speaks to them, rescued them and watered the flock. Reuel's response is immediate. Where is he? Why have you left the man? Call him, that he may eat bread. Moses is brought to the household of Reuel, priest of Midian. He eats bread, he stays, he settles with the man. And Reuel gives Moses his eldest daughter Zipporah as his wife. Now here is the first detail that most casual readers of Exodus miss entirely. Reuel, the father-in-law of Moses, is given 3 different names in the Hebrew Bible. He is called Reuel in Exodus 2:18. He is called Jethro in Exodus 3:1 and throughout most of the Midianite narrative. And in Numbers 10:29, he is called Hobab, or more precisely, Hobab is identified as the son of Reuel and the brother-in-law of Moses. 3 names, 2 generations, and a relationship with Moses that extends far beyond a simple marriage arrangement. The family of Zipporah is not peripheral to the story of the Exodus. They are essential to it. And Zipporah herself, the woman Moses chose, the woman he lived with for the years of his desert exile, the woman who bore him 2 sons named Gershom and Eleazar, is about to do something that scholars have called the most mysterious act in the entire book of Exodus. Exodus 4:24 through 26. 3 verses. Some of the most debated, most analyzed, most theologically difficult verses in the entire Pentateuch. Moses has received his commission at the burning bush. God has spoken. Moses has made his excuses. He cannot speak. He is not worthy. Please send someone else. God has answered each objection with patient, escalating authority. Moses has agreed. He packs his family. He takes his wife Zipporah and his sons and begins the journey back to Egypt. And then this. At a lodging place on the way, the Lord met him and sought to put him to death. God sought to put Moses to death, the man he had just commissioned, the man he had just spoken to from a burning bush, the man to whom he had revealed his own name, Yuf, for the first time. That man, God moves to kill him on the road to Egypt. No explanation is given. The text offers no preamble, no warning, no elaboration. Just the sudden, terrifying fact. On the road, in the dark, God comes for Moses, and Zipporah moves. Exodus 4:25. Then Zipporah took a flint and cut off her son's foreskin and touched Moses' feet with it and said, "Surely you are a bridegroom of blood to me." She takes a flint. She circumcises their son. She touches Moses with the blood. She speaks a declaration, bridegroom of blood, and the attack stops. So he let him alone. 3 verses, no further explanation, no divine commentary, no angelic annotation, just the attack stopped. Scholars have wrestled with this passage for millennia. The Babylonian Talmud, compiled between the 3rd and 5th centuries CE, discusses it across multiple tractates. Commentators from Rashi in the 11th century to modern scholars at Harvard and Oxford have proposed interpretations ranging from the straightforward to the deeply esoteric. The most widely accepted reading: Moses had failed to circumcise his son, perhaps because Zipporah opposed the practice, perhaps because the years in Midian had allowed the covenant sign to lapse, and God, moving to commission Moses as the deliverer of his covenant people, would not send an uncircumcised representative. The son's circumcision was the missing requirement. Zipporah supplied it. Here is the counterintuitive fact that reshapes the entire scene. In this moment, Zipporah acts as a priest. The circumcision was a covenantal rite, sacred, specific, tied to the promise God made to Abraham in Genesis 17. It was, in the ancient Israelite understanding, one of the most significant religious acts a family could perform. And it is performed here not by Moses, not by an Israelite priest, by a Midianite woman, by the daughter of a foreign priest who apparently understood the covenant requirement well enough, had been told about it clearly enough by her husband, to act on it in a moment of crisis with no hesitation and no instruction. She saved Moses' life, not metaphorically. The text says God was going to kill him. Zipporah stopped it, and then she virtually disappears from the narrative. Exodus 18:2 contains a single verse that most readers of the Bible walk past without stopping. Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, had taken Zipporah, Moses' wife, after he had sent her away. No drama, no confrontation scene, no tearful farewell recorded in the text. Simply, at some point during the events of the Exodus, after the burning bush, apparently before the crossing of the Red Sea, Moses sent Zipporah back to her father in Midian. The Hebrew verb used is shiluach, a formal dismissal. The same word used in Deuteronomy 24 for the formal sending away of a wife in the context of divorce proceedings. Moses sent her back. Was it a divorce? Was it protective, sending her and the boys to safety while he walked into the most dangerous political confrontation of the ancient world? Was it Zipporah's choice? Was it Jethro's arrangement? Was it something that happened at the lodging place incident, some rupture in their relationship after the blood-on-the-road encounter that the text does not describe? The Bible does not say. And that silence is its own kind of statement. What it does say is that Jethro brings Zipporah and her sons back to Moses in the wilderness after the Exodus, Exodus 18:5, and the reunion scene is described warmly. Moses goes out to meet his father-in-law. He bows, they exchange greetings, they go into Moses' tent together. But Zipporah is not described as speaking. She is not described as embracing Moses. She is present in the narrative for a single chapter, Exodus 18, and then she is gone again, completely, permanently. No further mention in Exodus, no mention in Leviticus, no mention in the early chapters of Numbers, until Numbers 12:1, and the phrase that has generated more scholarly debate than almost any other single verse in the Pentateuch, Numbers 12:1. And Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses because of the Ethiopian woman whom he had married, for he had married an Ethiopian woman. The Hebrew phrase is ishah Kushit, woman of Cush. In the ancient world, Cush referred to the territory south of Egypt, modern-day Sudan, northern Ethiopia, and parts of Eritrea. It was a vast, powerful kingdom. The Kushite Empire, known to the Egyptians as Nubia, was one of Egypt's most significant political relationships, alternately a trading partner, a vassal state, and a rival power. By the 8th century BCE, Kushite pharaohs would actually rule Egypt itself, the 25th dynasty. the so-called Black Pharaohs. But it is approximately 1446 BCE. Moses is in the wilderness of Sinai, and his own sister and brother are publicly challenging his leadership, not on theological grounds, not on strategic grounds, but because of the woman he married. Now here is the question that has occupied biblical scholarship for 3,000 years. Who is the Kushite woman? There are two primary answers in the scholarly and traditional literature, and they lead to entirely different stories. Answer 1. The Kushite woman is Zipporah. This is the argument made by several ancient interpreters, including Onkelos, the great 2nd century CE translator of the Torah into Aramaic. In his Targum, Onkelos renders ishah Kushit not as Ethiopian woman, but as beautiful woman, interpreting Kushit as a term of aesthetic praise rather than ethnic identification. The Kushite, in this reading, is a descriptor of Zipporah's appearance, not her nationality. Supporting this interpretation, Midian and the territory broadly called Kush were sometimes used interchangeably in ancient geographical references. Habakkuk 3:7 pairs Kushan and Midian as parallel terms. If Zipporah's homeland was considered within the broader Kushite geographic sphere, the description would be accurate. Answer 2. The Kushite woman is a second wife. This is the position taken by a significant strand of ancient Jewish tradition, preserved in the Midrash Sifrei Numbers and elaborated extensively in the Midrash Rabbah. According to this tradition, Moses married a Kushite woman during his years in Egypt. Specifically, during a military campaign he led for Pharaoh against the kingdom of Kush, before his meeting with Zipporah at the well of Midian. And this tradition is far older, far stranger, and far more detailed than most people have ever heard. The tradition preserved in Sefer HaYashar, the Book of Jasher, an ancient midrashic text referenced in the Bible itself in Joshua 10:13 and 2 Samuel 1:18, tells a story that the canonical Bible omits entirely. According to this ancient tradition, before Moses fled to Midian, while he was still a prince of Egypt, Pharaoh dispatched him at the head of an Egyptian army to confront an invasion by the kingdom of Kush. The campaign was long, the terrain was brutal. The Kushite forces were led by a king named Kikianus, and his capital city was surrounded by water on 3 sides and a field of deadly serpents on the 4th. The Egyptian army, according to the tradition, was trapped for 9 years. 9 years of siege. The Kushite king dies during this period. A man named Balaam, yes, the same Balaam who appears later in Numbers as the prophet hired to curse Israel, advises the Kushites to crown a new king. They choose a man named Kochobus, or in some versions of the tradition, they look elsewhere entirely. And then the Kushites, facing their own internal crisis, send a message to Moses and the Egyptian army. They offer him the throne. Moses becomes king of Kush. He rules for 40 years, according to the tradition, the same 40-year period that other chronological frameworks assign to his years in Midian. And during his reign, the daughter of the former king, a Kushite princess named Adoniah, or in some versions of the tradition Tharbis, falls in love with him. She sees him from the city walls during the siege. She sends messengers. She offers to betray the city in exchange for marriage. Moses agrees, takes the city, takes the crown, takes the woman. He marries the princess of Kush. But Moses does not forget where he came from, or who he is. The tradition records that he honored the Kushite princess. He treated her with respect. He did not diminish her, but he never consummated the marriage. He wore the crown of Kush and honored its customs, but maintained the boundary of his own identity. Eventually, the people of Kush noticed. They realized their king's heart was not fully among them, and so, again in the tradition, they release him. They crown the princess herself as queen in his place. And Moses, aged approximately 67 by the Jasher chronology, leaves Cush and walks toward Midian, where he sits down at a well and meets Zipporah. Numbers 12 opens at a place called Hazeroth, a wilderness encampment, one of the stops on Israel's 40-year journey. The precise location is debated, but is generally placed in the northeastern Sinai Peninsula. Miriam and Aaron speak against their brother. The text records their specific objection in verse 1, the Kushite woman, and then immediately records their deeper grievance in verse 2. Has the Lord spoken only through Moses? Has he not spoken through us also? Leadership, authority, prophetic legitimacy. The complaint about the Kushite woman is the presenting issue, but the real conflict runs deeper, and the text makes this clear by immediately pivoting from the Ethiopian wife to has God only spoken through Moses? Why would a marriage, even a controversial one, trigger a leadership challenge? If the Kushite woman is Zipporah, the objection may be to her Midianite identity, a foreign priestess, the daughter of a priest of Midian, now occupying a position of influence within Israel's community. Miriam, as the leading prophetess of Israel, may have felt the presence of a foreign woman in the inner circle as a threat to the purity of the covenant community. If the Kushite woman is a second wife from Cush, the objection is different. Moses has taken a wife from Egypt's former enemy, from a foreign kingdom, from a lineage outside the covenant entirely. How can such a man claim exclusive prophetic authority over God's people? Either way, what Miriam and Aaron are really asking is the question that every major leadership crisis in the Bible eventually asks: who gets to speak for God? The divine response to the challenge is immediate, severe, and deliberately humbling. Numbers 12:4. And suddenly the Lord said to Moses and to Aaron and Miriam, "Come out, you three, to the tent of meeting." Suddenly, not after a period of deliberation. Not after Moses defends himself. Verse 3 records that Moses said nothing at all, that he was very meek, more than all people who were on the face of the earth. God moves without waiting for Moses to make his own case. The cloud of divine presence descends on the tent of meeting. God speaks to Aaron and Miriam directly. Numbers 12:6-8. God's self-defense of Moses is one of the most extraordinary passages in the entire Torah. Hear my words. If there is a prophet among you, I, the Lord, make myself known to him in a vision. I speak with him in a dream. Not so with my servant Moses. He is faithful in all my house. With him I speak mouth to mouth, clearly, and not in riddles, and he beholds the form of the Lord. Mouth to mouth. Not vision, not dream, not riddle. Moses occupies a prophetic category that the Bible places in a class entirely by itself. Deuteronomy 34:10 will later confirm it. There has not arisen a prophet since in Israel like Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face. And then God's anger burns, and he departs. And when the cloud lifts from the tent of meeting, Miriam is standing white with leprosy. Aaron looks at her. He turns to Moses. And Moses cries out, 5 words in Hebrew, the shortest prayer in the Bible. "Oh God, please heal her." After Numbers 12, Zipporah is never mentioned again. Not in Numbers, not in Deuteronomy, not in Joshua, not in Judges, though her father's family, the Kenites, appear repeatedly in the subsequent narrative, allied with Israel, present at significant moments of the conquest and settlement. But Zipporah herself, silence. The Jewish tradition, particularly the interpretive tradition of the Talmudic era, fills this silence in several ways. One school of thought, represented in the Babylonian Talmud tractate Shabbat 87a, argues that Moses chose celibacy after receiving his full prophetic commission, that the demands of being perpetually available to receive divine communication required a separation from marital life that Zipporah respected and accommodated. In this reading, Zipporah is not abandoned. She is honored, and the separation is mutual, chosen, a sacrifice both of them make for the sake of the mission. But there is another tradition, preserved in the Midrashic literature, that gives Zipporah a voice the canonical text denies her. In Sifrei Numbers, commentary on the Numbers 12 passage, Zipporah is described as confiding in Miriam. She tells Miriam, privately, woman to woman, about the nature of her marriage to Moses, about the separations, about the loneliness of being the wife of a man whose primary relationship is with God. Miriam, hearing this, is the one who raises the challenge, not out of petty jealousy, the tradition suggests, but out of genuine outrage on Zipporah's behalf. She and Aaron are defending the woman the Bible gives no voice to. And the divine response, which singles out Miriam for punishment, not Aaron, has troubled readers ever since. Why is Miriam punished more severely than Aaron when both spoke against Moses? The Talmud in Sota 12a offers an answer that circles back to gender. Miriam was the initiator. Aaron followed his sister's lead. And the punishment, leprosy, public shame, exclusion from the camp for 7 days, mirrors the public nature of her challenge. But commentators from the medieval period onward have noted something else. The 7 days of Miriam's exclusion delays the entire community. Numbers 12:15 specifies that the people did not march until Miriam was brought back in. 600,000 people waiting in the desert for one woman to complete her quarantine. The community stops for her. However the divine judgment is interpreted, this detail is remarkable. The woman who challenged Moses is also the woman whom the entire people of Israel honored by refusing to move without her. There is a place on earth where the story of Moses' Ethiopian wife has never been forgotten. Not archived, not debated in footnotes, not recovered from ancient manuscripts, remembered, continuously, liturgically, as living history. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church, one of the oldest Christian institutions in the world, whose origins trace to the 4th century CE and whose theological roots go back further still, has maintained a specific, detailed tradition about the Kushite woman of Numbers 12:1 for 2 millennia. In the Ethiopian tradition, she is not Zipporah, she is a distinct woman, a Kushite princess, and her marriage to Moses is not a minor biographical footnote, it is a foundational element of the relationship between the people of Kush and the God of Israel. The Kebra Nagast, the Ethiopian national epic, compiled in its current form around 1320 CE, but drawing on traditions that scholars date to at least the 6th century CE, traces the lineage of the Ethiopian royal house to the union of Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. But embedded in this broader narrative of Ethiopia's sacred relationship with Israel is the memory of an earlier connection, Moses, the Kushite princess, and the thread of covenant that runs between the two peoples. Ethiopian biblical scholarship and the Ethiopian Church has produced formidable biblical scholarship across 1,700 years, generally takes the position that the Kushite woman of Numbers 12 is a real historical figure, a woman of Kushite identity who was Moses' wife, whose marriage to the greatest prophet of Israel represented a divine intention to include the African peoples of the Nile Valley in the covenant community. This is not a marginal interpretation. It is the mainstream position of an ancient living church with over 50 million members today. And it places the silence of the Hebrew Bible about this woman in a different light entirely. Because if the Kushite woman was real, if she was a second wife, a woman of African identity who married the deliverer of Israel, then her absence from the biblical narrative becomes a question with implications that extend far beyond literary analysis. Who decided what went into the final text of the Hebrew Bible? Who determined which stories were preserved and which were not? And why would the story of a Kushite woman, wife of Moses, present in the wilderness community for the most formative years of Israelite national identity, be reduced to a single verse that is almost immediately overshadowed by Miriam's leprosy. The critical biblical scholarship of the 19th and 20th centuries approached Numbers 12:1 with the tools of source criticism, the attempt to identify the different textual traditions that were woven together to produce the Pentateuch as we have it. What they found was not simple. The passage in Numbers 12 belongs to what source critics call the JE tradition, an early layer of the Pentateuch that preserves some of the oldest narrative material in the Bible. And within that tradition, the reference to a Kushite wife sits in tension with the broader narrative about Zipporah in ways that suggest two distinct source traditions were being preserved side by side. The 20th century scholar Martin Noth, one of the most influential figures in Pentateuchal studies, argued that the Kushite wife reference in Numbers 12 was an independent tradition, separate from the Midianite Zipporah material of Exodus, that the final editors of the Pentateuch chose to preserve even though it complicated the narrative. Why would an editor preserve a complication? Because it was too well established in the community's memory to remove. Professor John Van Seters of the University of North Carolina, writing in his landmark 1994 work, The Life of Moses, argued that the Numbers 12 reference preserves a genuine historical memory of a Kushite connection in Moses's biography, a connection that was important enough to the communities that transmitted the text that it survived even the standardizing tendencies of later editorial work. George Coates of Lexington Theological Seminary identified the Numbers 12 passage as having the character of what source critics call a conflict narrative, a story specifically designed to address a dispute about authority, in which the Kushite wife functions as the presenting issue for a deeper power struggle. But here is the scholarly observation that none of these frameworks fully accounts for. The phrase in Numbers 12:1 is doubled. Because of the Ethiopian woman whom he had married, for he had married an Ethiopian woman. The repetition is not stylistic decoration. In biblical Hebrew narrative, deliberate repetition within a single verse signals emphasis. The text is insisting on something. It is not letting you glide past this detail. It repeats it because it does not want you to read it as incidental. She was Kushite, and she was his wife. The text says so twice, in the same sentence, because someone who transmitted this text believed that mattered. We have followed this story from a palace in Egypt to a desert well in Midian, from a dark road where God moved to kill a prophet, to the wilderness encampment where his sister was struck white as snow, from the rock-hewn churches of Ethiopia to the reading rooms of Oxford and North Carolina. And we have not found a clean answer. That is not a failure of the investigation. That is the nature of the evidence. What we have found is this. There was a woman. She was connected to the land of Kush, to the vast, ancient, sophisticated African civilization that Egypt alternately feared and revered. She was connected to Moses at a moment of maximum significance, the wilderness period, the covenant-making years, the time when Israel's identity was being forged in the furnace of desert hardship. Her presence provoked a crisis, a public challenge to Moses' authority, brought by his own family, that God adjudicated with unusual directness and unusual severity. And then she disappears from the canonical record. But disappearing from the canonical record is not the same as disappearing from history. Zipporah, if she is the Kushite woman, disappears from the text, but her family, the Kenites, remain present throughout the subsequent narrative of Israel's history. They are present at the conquest of Canaan. They are allied with Israel through the period of the Judges. In 1 Samuel 15, Saul warns the Kenites to separate themselves from the Amalekites before battle, because of the kindness their ancestors showed Israel in the wilderness. The family of Moses' wife, the family that includes the woman who saved his life on a dark road with a flint and a prayer, is woven into the subsequent 500 years of Israelite history. She disappeared. Her people did not. And if the Kushite woman is a second wife, a princess from the Nile Valley who chose the God of Israel over the gods of her homeland, who walked into the wilderness with a foreign prophet and bore the weight of being the woman the canonical text could not quite decide how to handle, then her absence is itself a testimony. She was there. The text says so, twice, in the same sentence. The Bible does not always tell the full story of the women who shaped its men. It told us enough about Zipporah to know she was extraordinary, a woman who acted with priestly courage on a dark road when her husband could not. And it told us enough about the Kushite woman to know that her presence mattered so much that it triggered a divine intervention. Their stories matter. They deserve to be told. The great 20th century Ethiopian biblical scholar Getachew Haile, Professor Emeritus of the Hill Museum and Manuscript Library at St. John's University, spent decades documenting the Ethiopian Church's traditions about Moses and the Kushite connection. His conclusion, reached after a lifetime of examining manuscripts that Western scholarship had largely ignored, was simple. The Ethiopian Church remembered something the Western canonical tradition forgot, and what it remembered was a woman, strong, Kushite, present at the formation of the covenant people of God. Her fate, as the Bible tells it, is silence. But silence in the biblical narrative does not mean absence from history. It means the text ran out of room, or the editors ran out of will, for a story that the evidence suggests was real, was significant, and was never fully finished. That story, like all the best stories, is still open. It is open in the ancient manuscripts. It is open in the traditions of the Ethiopian Church. It is open in the doubled repetition of a single verse in Numbers 12 that refused to be smoothed away by the editing process. It is open in the silence that follows every mention of her name, a silence that is not absence but waiting for someone to stop, to look, to ask, who was she? You stopped, you looked, you asked. That is enough to begin. If this investigation changed something in how you read the Exodus story, if you found yourself seeing Moses differently, or Zipporah differently, or the Kushite woman as something more than a footnote, leave your thoughts in the comments below. I want to know where you land on this. Was the Kushite woman Zipporah a second wife, a tradition the canon couldn't quite contain? This conversation deserves more than one voice. If you're new here, welcome. Subscribe and hit the bell. This channel goes exactly where the text leads, even when the text leads somewhere uncomfortable. The story of the forgotten women of the Bible is far from over. I'll see you in the next one.